This pond, it's mine now. The HOA president, Carol Martinez, stood right here, pointing at my family's ranch pond like she owned it. And then she did something unbelievable. She brought 100 people to camp beside it. Champagne, fairy lights, a 3-tier cake, the whole suburban fantasy. But she made one small mistake, a colossal, life-altering error in judgment. She picked the wrong pond. See, when you run 50 bulls and horses, when you run a ranch that's been operating on the same land for a century, waste has to go somewhere. And on a century-old ranch, things flow in ways city folks, especially high-maintenance HOA presidents, don't expect. What happened next made headlines 3 states over. Think your HOA is bad? Drop your state below. This story will make yours look tame. It all started on a Tuesday morning when I found a letter in my mailbox. Typed on Meadowbrook HOA letterhead, so crisp you could cut yourself on it. Dear Mr. Thompson, it read, the Meadowbrook Homeowners Association requests your cooperation in sharing usage of the water feature adjacent to our property line for the beautification of our community. I had to read it 3 times before the sheer, breathtaking audacity really sank in. Water feature. That was my pond, built by my grandfather's own hands, sitting on land my family had owned since before these McMansions were even a gleam in some developer's eye. I was still shaking my head, trying to process the level of delusion, when I heard the click-clack of high heels on my gravel driveway. There she was, Carol Martinez, HOA president, marching toward me like she was reclaiming occupied territory. She carried a clipboard in one hand and a measuring tape in the other, wearing a white pantsuit so pristine it looked like she'd never encountered actual dirt in her life. The universe, though, has a sense of humor. The moment she stepped off the driveway, her designer heel found the one fresh chicken dropping my hens had left as a welcome gift. I watched her face contort as she tried desperately to maintain her composure, scraping her shoe on my grass while pretending nothing happened. Mr. Thompson, she said, flashing teeth so white they could signal aircraft. I trust you received our letter about the community water feature. I leaned against my fence post, taking my sweet time to answer. Ma'am, that's a ranch pond, not a community pool. Been in my family longer than your HOAs existed. She laughed, the kind of dismissive laugh that said she wasn't used to hearing the word no. Oh, I think you'll find that natural resources benefit everyone. Your pond would look so much better with a fountain, some benches, maybe a gazebo, and of course, without all the rural elements. By rural elements, I knew she meant me. She meant my faded jeans, my working boots, my cattle, and my life. The pond stays as is, I said simply. It's part of a working ranch. Carol's smile tightened like a guitar string about to snap. I need to speak to your manager, she said, then caught herself. Oh wait, you don't have one. How quaint. She pulled out her measuring tape and actually started measuring the distance from my fence to the water's edge, jotting notes on her clipboard like she was surveying her own property. You know, she said, not looking up. I grew up next to a ranch. I know all about the smells, the noise, the unpleasantness. That's why I worked so hard to get where I am today, to get away from all that. But this pond, it's different. It's beautiful. Wasted on. She gestured vaguely at my work boots. All this. There was a hint of old hurt wrapped in new arrogance, a genuine resentment of my life that was more dangerous than any simple greed. I felt my jaw tighten, but kept my voice level. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to get off my property now. She clicked her pen closed with theatrical precision. I was trying to be nice, Mr. Thompson. Bad choice, cowboy. She turned on her freshly soiled heel and marched back to her white SUV, managing to make even her retreat look threatening. But Carol didn't know she just declared war on the wrong farmer. Comment, run, Carol, if you already know she'd done messed up. See, what Carol didn't understand was that she wasn't the first person to try to push my family around. My granddad faced down developers in the 70s. My dad fought off corporate farms in the 90s. And now it was my turn. The difference was I had something they didn't. 50 years of accumulated knowledge about every inch of this land, including some secrets that would make Carol wish she'd never set her manicured foot on my property. As her SUV disappeared, I looked at my pond. My beautiful, clean pond with its lily pads and clear water that reflected the sky like a mirror. Then I looked past the trees to where the other pond sat, hidden from view. The one we didn't talk about at dinner parties. the one that served a very specific purpose on a working ranch. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Carol wanted to play games. I knew exactly which cards to deal. The HOA didn't waste any time. 3 days after Carol's visit, I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery. I could see a landscaping crew setting up industrial-grade sprinkler systems along the property line, the kind golf courses use. "Morning, gentlemen," I called out, keeping my tone friendly. "Help you with something?" The crew chief looked uncomfortable. "Just installing some irrigation for the HOA, sir, for their new landscaping project." I noticed Carol's white SUV parked across the street. The first test came that afternoon. Water arced high into the air, and wouldn't you know it, a sudden breeze carried the spray right onto my property. My tool shed, my truck, and half my vegetable garden got an unexpected shower. But here's the thing about karma. The wind shifted, and those powerful sprinklers sent a wall of water right back at the HOA's side. I heard tires squeal and looked up to see Carol's white SUV getting absolutely drenched. I couldn't help but chuckle as she drove off. But my amusement died the next morning when I walked out to check on my mother's rose garden. The heritage roses she'd planted 40 years ago were drowning in pools of standing water. Several plants were already showing signs of root rot. These weren't just flowers. They were living memories, victims of Carol's petty water war. I knelt in the mud, trying to save what I could, my hands black with soil as I dug drainage channels. That's when I found it. A piece of old paper, laminated and buried near the largest rose bush. Part of a blueprint, it looked like, with my grandfather's meticulous handwriting in the margins. Tom Bradley appeared at my fence line, coffee mug in hand. At 70 years old, Tom was one of the original residents. He'd known my grandfather. "Rough morning, son," he said, watching me work. "Heard about the new sprinkler system. Carol's idea, no doubt." I showed him the damaged roses and his face darkened. "Your mother would be heartbroken." He paused. "You got that look, Liam? Same look your granddad had when the county tried to force that highway through here. What are you thinking?" I held up the piece of blueprint I'd found. "I'm thinking Granddad might have left me more than just land and memories." Tom leaned closer. "Is that what I think it is?" Before I could answer, he turned serious. "Carol's been pushing people around for 5 years now. Made me cut down my apple tree because it was attracting bees. Like bees are a bad thing." I spent the rest of the day trying to salvage the roses. The quote was $3,000 to restore the heritage garden. $3,000 I didn't have for damage I didn't cause. As the sun set, I sat on my porch, that piece of blueprint in my hands. It showed part of a water system, pipes and valves, dated 1968. I was sure there was more. That night, I made a decision. Carol wanted to play water games. Fine, but she'd picked the wrong pond to mess with. Tone becomes insightful, slightly technical, building anticipation. The thing about old farms is they're full of secrets. Drainage systems, underground pipes, connections that aren't on any modern survey. My grandfather had built this place when regulations were different. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for the rest of those blueprints, because something told me Granddad had prepared for this exact situation. That evening, Carol posted on her social media page a photo of my pond, future site of Meadowbrook Community Pool, making our neighborhood beautiful, one improvement at a time. Tom showed me the post the next morning. "She's already claiming victory." We stood by my fence. 3 generations of Thompson kids had learned to swim in that water. Now Carol wanted to turn those memories into some kind of suburban water feature. "You know what you ought to do?" Tom said suddenly. "Give her exactly what she deserves. Let her and her fancy friends find out what ranch life really smells like." I let out a long sigh. "Can't do it, Tom." "Why the hell not?" "It's your pond." "Because that's the clean pond. Spring-fed, filtered through limestone, probably the cleanest water in the county." Tom's coffee mug stopped halfway to his mouth. "Wait, what?" I pointed past the cottonwood trees. "The waste pond is way over there, behind those trees. That's where all the runoff from the barn and pastures goes. This one," I gestured at the pretty pond Carol coveted. "This one's cleaner than her bottled water." The waste pond collected runoff from 50 head of cattle and a dozen horses. The smell alone on a hot day could peel paint. I pulled out the piece of blueprint. Granddad was smarter than people gave him credit for. This shows part of an overflow system connects the 2 ponds underground. Tom studied the faded lines. "Emergency drainage," he murmured. "In case of flooding." "Brilliant. There's an intake valve down there," I said quietly. sealed for 50 years. Tom looked at me, and I saw the fighter he must have been. If you got a way to teach her a lesson, legal-like, I won't say a word against it. As if summoned, a courier arrived with an envelope bearing the HOA seal. Moonlight soiree by the pond. Carol had even included a little map showing where to park on my access road. She wasn't just planning a party. She was staging a coup, trying to establish precedent for community use of my land. I looked at Tom, then at the pond where that hidden valve waited. She's actually throwing a party, I said, at my pond that she doesn't own. Tom snorted. Woman's got balls. I folded the invitation. You know what? I think I'll let her have her party. Seems only neighborly. Tom's eyes narrowed. You're up to something. I smiled. Granddad always said this land would take care of us if we took care of it. Maybe it's time to test that theory. 3 hours before the party, that's when everything started falling into place. I had spent the week searching, and finally, in a dusty box marked farm infrastructure, I found the complete blueprints. There it was, drawn in Granddad's meticulous hand. Emergency overflow system to prevent flooding during heavy rains. Test valve annually. Another note. Only open during rain forecast for pressure equalization. I checked my weather app's 70% chance of thunderstorms tonight. Perfect. The old valve was exactly where the blueprint indicated. Rust flaked off under my fingers as I gripped the brass wheel. This wasn't about revenge, I told myself. This was about testing a 50-year-old safety system during appropriate weather conditions. Completely legal, completely necessary. Meanwhile, Carol's party preparations were in full swing. I could hear the bustle of activity. Carol herself was live-streaming the setup. We're transforming this neglected eyesore into paradise, she gushed. The first guests started arriving as the sun touched the horizon. Carol stood at the center of it all, resplendent in a white designer dress. Picture it, she said loud enough for me to hear. A floating dock right there. The first rumble of thunder was so low most people didn't notice. But I did. It was time. The valve was even more stubborn than I'd expected. My hands were getting raw from gripping the rusty metal. Another rumble of thunder, closer now. I grabbed a pipe wrench from my truck. Tom materialized beside me. Need a hand. Together, we pulled. The combined weight of our effort making the valve groan. Something deep in the mechanism gave way with a crack. It's moving, Tom grunted. I heard it before I saw it. A gurgling, rumbling sound from deep underground. The pipe was open. 50 years of sediment was breaking loose, and behind it, the contents of my waste pond were beginning to flow. We retreated to my porch to watch nature take its course. At first, nothing seemed to happen at the party. Then, a child near the pond's edge wrinkled her nose. Mommy, something smells funny. That's when I saw it. A dark cloud spreading beneath the lily pads like ink in water. The clear pond was changing color from the bottom up. A woman in a pink dress was the first to really notice. Her shriek cut through the music like a knife. The DJ felt his equipment start to spark as the water composition changed. His turntables shorted out. The music died with a warped, grinding sound. People were backing away from the pond now. The smell was unmistakable. It smells like poop, a child announced at the top of his lungs. The three-tiered cake became a casualty of the stampede. The fondant swan disappearing into the brown morass. Carol stood frozen at the epicenter of the chaos. Her white dress now splattered. Her face a mask of horror and rage. My Louis Vuitton, she screamed as her designer bag slowly sank into the muck. Who did this? I'll sue everyone. The live stream was still running, broadcasting the disaster to hundreds of viewers who were flooding the comments with poop emojis. Sheriff Brody arrived within minutes, reporting chemical warfare. Carol rushed him immediately, pointing at me. Arrest him. He poisoned our water. Brody looked at me, then at the pond. Ma'am, whose property is this pond on? That's not. I need to see property deeds, permits for this gathering, and any evidence of criminal wrongdoing. Not accusations, ma'am. Evidence. The rain started then. Fat drops that sent the remaining party guests scurrying for their cars. The next morning, Carol arrived with 3 septic pump trucks. I'm cleaning up your mess, she announced. My lawyer says I can put a lien on your property for the cleanup costs. I stepped down from my porch. That's private property you're planning to pump, ma'am. You need my permission to access it. The lead driver, Rex, shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, we can't pump without the owner's consent. That's theft of services. Carol tried to bribe him, but Rex stood firm. As the trucks rumbled away, Carol's composure finally cracked. "You think you're so clever," she hissed at me. "But I've called an emergency HOA meeting. You're going to lose everything." Tom had gone inside the meeting as my eyes and ears. The text flew. Henderson just stood up. Henderson told her to sit down. Crowd gasping. Henderson now listing every overreach Carol's done. The apple tree, Johnson's garden. People are getting angry. Henderson just called for vote of no confidence. Vote is legal. This is insane. The vote passed, 47-12. But Carol wasn't done. She proceeded with the lawsuit. The next morning, Sheriff Brody showed up with official papers. "Cease and desist order," he said apologetically. "Can't use any water from either pond until the environmental assessment is complete. Judge's orders. Without water access, I'd have to truck in water for the cattle at enormous expense. The heritage roses would die." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I'd never used, but always kept. "Andy Abernathy, this is Liam Thompson, Frank's grandson. Well, been wondering when I'd hear from you. What's the trouble?" When I finished, he chuckled. "Environmental terrorism over a pond overflow. Tell me, does the 1968 infrastructure plan still exist?" "Yes, sir. I have it right here." "Then I'll see you tomorrow. And Liam, tell the HOA president she might want to hire better lawyers." The law offices were all glass and chrome. Carol had assembled her legal dream team. Abernathy walked in. His eyes were sharp as surgical instruments. Brennan launched into his opening statement. "Mr. Thompson deliberately contaminated a water source. This is criminal negligence at best, environmental terrorism at worst." Abernathy listened. "Fascinating theory, counselor. Tell me, have you reviewed the county planning documents for this property?" He reached into his briefcase and withdrew a rolled document. March 15, 1968. County Ordinance 68-1422. This is the approved water management plan for the Thompson Ranch, filed with the county and signed by the county commissioner, the water board director, and interestingly enough, myself as assistant county attorney. The room was silent. "Please observe Section 4, subsection C." Abernathy continued. "Emergency overflow system. Testing required during appropriate weather conditions." He looked up. "Tell me, Mr. Brennan, what was the weather forecast for the night in question?" 70% chance of thunderstorms. Severe weather warning issued for the county. So, Mr. Thompson was testing a required safety system during exactly the conditions specified in the county ordinance, Abernathy mused. How fascinating that this routine maintenance happened to coincide with an unpermitted gathering on his private property. Carol couldn't contain herself. "Unpermitted? We don't need permits for community events." Abernathy turned to her slowly. "On your property?" "No. But this pond is on Mr. Thompson's property, is it not?" He pulled out the original deed. According to the original deed filed in 1893, the pond is specifically described as stock water for agricultural use. There's no easement for public access. Brennan tried to rally. Regardless of property rights, Mr. Thompson's actions resulted in environmental contamination of his own pond. Abernathy interrupted. "On his own property where, I should note, your clients were trespassing. Furthermore," he slid another report across the table. "Water quality test from this morning. The pond has returned to its baseline state. The contamination was simply organic matter from a working agricultural operation, completely legal under right to farm statutes." The room was dead silent. "What are you proposing, Mr. Abernathy?" Brennan asked carefully. "Your clients publicly apologize for trespassing. Pay for the damage to Mr. Thompson's property, including the destroyed heritage roses and cut fence, and we all walk away. Otherwise, I'll be filing charges for criminal trespass, vandalism, harassment, and defamation." Carol shot to her feet. "This is blackmail. You can't. I've worked too hard to get away from." She stopped abruptly, her mask shattering. "To get away from what, Carol?" Tom asked quietly from the corner. "From the smell of cow? From people like us?" "Yes," she screamed. "Yes, from all of it. From being poor. From being nobody. From having to smell that stench every day of my childhood. I earned better. I deserve better." Abernathy turned to her lawyers. "One more thing. I've been contacted by 47 residents of the Meadowbrook HOA. There will be a special vote next Tuesday, a vote of no confidence. We withdraw all claims," Brennan said formally. As people filed out, Carol remained seated. Tom paused by her chair. You know, Carol, that apple tree you made me cut down, my wife planted it the year before she died. Outside, Abernathy shook my hand. Your grandfather would be proud. He always knew this day might come. He was protecting not just his land, but his family's future. The special HOA meeting the following Tuesday. The vote was unanimous, 47-0. Tom Bradley was elected interim president. 1 month later, my pond was crystal clear again. My mother's heritage roses were blooming more magnificently than ever. Turns out, a little organic fertilizer, properly diluted and applied, works wonders for roses. The SUV was gone from across the street. A for sale sign in the yard. I looked out at the 2 ponds. Both exactly where they belonged. My grandfather's voice echoed in my memory. Good fences make good neighbors, but good lawyers make better ones. So tell me, was Carol's motivation true community concern, or was it purely the fear and hatred of her own past, manifesting as destructive control? And what about Andy Abernathy? Is that kind of old-school, meticulous legal preparation the only way to beat modern HOA tyranny? Drop your thoughts, your experiences with power abuse, or your favorite defense attorney names in the comments below. And if this story proves that experience beats enthusiasm, hit the like button and subscribe. Let's see how many people out there know the true meaning of right to farm.